It's time for the Wrestlecast on the Sportscast Media Network. Join us now for a discussion on wrestling at the high school and college levels. Here's Gage Gill, Shane Barron, and Danny Davis.
We'd like to welcome everyone to the second broadcast here of the Wrestlecast on the Sportscast Media Network. We know there are 71 million podcast episodes available, and we're glad you chose ours. If you haven't subscribed, please do so, as our current goal is 1,000 subscribers. I'm Danny Davis, and I'll be joined by your weekly hosts, Gage Gill and Shane Barron. We'll also be joined today by Lindsay Marshall and Cindy Johnson, who are heading up the girls' wrestling program here at Mediapolis. We'll have several of the girls on the wrestling team in here to tell us about the program and how much they enjoy wrestling. Shane also has an interview with William Penn girls coach Jake Kadel, along with one of the top wrestlers in the nation, Mia Palumbo. And Gage spoke with Cody Van Tiger of the Marines about their involvement in high school wrestling. All that and more coming up in the program. And if you're interested in advertising on the Wrestlecast, you can email us at thewrestlecast@outlook.com. All right, let's get started with our hosts, Gage Gill and Shane Barron. Guys, we've had so much going on this past week. Have you got your Christmas shopping done?
Christmas shopping is not even close to done for me. I'm hoping to spend one breakneck Wednesday right after school's done and just see if I can get everything done one day like I vow never to do ever again, but next year I'll be doing the same thing.
Gage, you're going to have one more extra to shop for?
Yeah, that's pretty much the only thing going on in my house right now is trying to figure out when that's going to happen and make sure we're prepared. So I don't even know if we'll celebrate Christmas this year.
All right, guys. Well, it's been a busy week, so let's get on with it. Tell me a little bit about what's going on with high school wrestling in the area.
Well, what we thought we'd do, Danny, is the rankings for high school just came out. We got a lot of local kids that are represented in those rankings. We thought we'd give our listeners a taste of just the kind of talent that's in this area in case they're not aware. And Gage is going to have some more in-depth analysis, but I'm going to get it rolling here with Class 1A. We've got some really tough teams to confront at the state level if you're from Southeast Iowa. Number one is perennial power, Don Bosco as a team, and they get things rolling with Hayden Schwab at 106. He's ranked number one, and currently as far as these rankings are concerned, we have no local people at the 106 level in 1A. The same can be said at 113, except, Gage Samo of Waco, Wayland, has emerged in the top 10 now. Number one is Gavin Landers of Denver, so be on the lookout for Gage out at Waco for his season. He wrestled very well at the Jeremy Folk Classic in New London. At 120, it's Jaden Rinkin at Nashua, Plainfield. And Kane Forseen from New London is now ranked 9th, and he won the Jeremy Folk Classic a couple days ago. So Kane is a new student at New London, and I'm looking forward to talking to him in the near future. At 126, Luke Guzman of Highland Riverside, he's ranked 7th. 126 is got another Don Bosco kid, Dawson Youngbloot, at number one. 132, I know it's a familiar Wapello name, Gabe Brisker of Wilton is 4th at 132. He's just a sophomore. Brody Brisker of Wilton is number 2 at 138. At 144, we're locally represented by Zach Harbison. He comes in at number 11 at 144. At 150, the number one wrestler out there is Keaton Moeller of Starmont, and there is no local talent there at 150 for us in the Southeast Iowa area. At 157, it's Kyler Knack, also of Don Bosco, so you can kind of see that as far as the team race is concerned, Don Bosco is going to be tremendously difficult to beat. Don Bosco also features the number 3 wrestler at 165 and Andrew Kimball. But locally we have Michael Raines. He comes in at number 10 this week. He was at number 8 at Flow wrestling the other when we talked to him the other week. At 175, Waco's Loudon Huizinga is a junior. He's number 5 in the state. The number 1 guy is Jace Nelson Brown of Emmetsburg. And guess who? Guess what? Don Bosco's represented at 175 is number 2, Caden Knack. So Don Bosco just seems to be loaded everywhere here. Number 190, McCade Bloker of North Butler is number 1. And at 215, we don't have any local people there, but we do have some local talent, as Isaac Cox of Cardinal of Eldon comes in at number 10 for 285. And number 1 guy is Mason Nip of Columbus Catholic. So we do have some local talent out there, and they're well represented. But to get in that team race, it's going to take a lot of good effort from our local Southeast Iowa kids. Class 2A is a little different story. Notre Dame of West Burlington, they're ranked 6th right now, according to the latest rankings. And they're featured at 106 with Colt Boyles. Number 1 guy is Clayton Perot of Mount Vernon. Notre Dame also has Carter West, ranked 5th at 113. He's a senior. Braden Bonsack of Union LaPorte City is number 1 at that position. 120, no local talent that we see. Vincent Mayberry of Glenwood is number 1. At 126, no local talent here. Robert Howes of Keokuk would be our most local guy there. He's ranked 12th. Jace Hedeman of Union LaPorte City is number 1. Cade Bloom is number 1 at 132, and we're represented by Aaron Boone of Washington. He's a junior. He's number 4 at 132. 138 has no local talent. Unfortunately, 144, the same can be said. Jackson Jaspers of Mount Vernon is number 1 at 144. We do get some Notre Dame attention at number 10 with Dirk Boyles. He's ranked 10th. Anders Kittleson of Osage is number 1 at 150. Blake Wilson is number 11 at 157. Tucker Strangle of Osage is number 1 at 157. Mediapolis gets its first bit of attention here at 165. Kyler Crow is number 11 with Brody Hendricks of Humboldt as the number 1 ranked wrestler. 175, Heston Johnson of Roland Story is number 1. And locally, we're not featured there. 190, Brody Sampson of Ballard is number 1. And we have no local talent there. And at 215, the same can be said. Henry Christensen is number 1 of Ballard at that weight class. And finally, at 285, we get back into Southeast Iowa a little bit. Russell Coyle of Columbus Community is number 4 at 285. So that's the 2A scene for you. The 3A scene features some Burlington wrestlers. Number 5, ranked Braxton Hutchinson at 106. He's number 5. Dylan Munson of Cedar Rapids Prairie is number 1. At 113, number 1 is Alexander Pierce of Iowa City West. He's just a sophomore at 113. Jake Knight of Bettendorf is number 1 at 120. A familiar name for Iowa fans. Drew Ayala is number 2 at 120 in Class 3A. Number 4, at 126, we have Koufax Christensen of Waukee Northwest, number 1 at 126. And we get down to 132, we got some local representation. Logan Pennick of Fort Madison, a junior. He's number 9 at 132. At 138, we have Carter Freeman of Waukee Northwest. He's number 1. At 144, Kane Nocturborn of Linmar is number 1. No local talent there yet. 150, Bas Diaz of Waverly Shell Rock is number 1. At 157, Cael Voinovich of Iowa City High. No local talent at those 2 weight classes. Jacob Helgeson of 165 of Johnston is number 1. At 175, Maximus Magina of Waterloo East is number 1. And at 190, we do get Teague Smith of Fort Madison, number 7. Brent Slade is number 1 at 190 from Southeast Polk. And we do have some Southeast Polk ties to kind of mention in future broadcasts. At 215, Dreshawn Ross of Fort Dodge is number 1. And Isaac Thatcher is number 3 at that weight class. So let's look for Isaac Thatcher in the near future. And at number 1 for 285 is Daniel Herrera of Ames. The only girls, and we do have a lot of girls wrestling to talk about in this broadcast. We do have Haley Kemper, number 7 at Fort Madison at 100 pounds. And at, let me see, we're going to at least mention, we're trying to get some more solidified information about Rena Uterbach. Is that how it's pronounced, Gage? Rena Uterbach?
Of Sigourney.
Of Sigourney, yeah. She's ranked 110. A lot of speculation about her career. We don't have anything solidified as far as fact. We'll just say that she's ranked 1 at 110 right now. She's a junior. The only other girls that are currently ranked is Tatum Wolford of Wapello. She's number 8. She's a senior. She was recently named the Hawkeye Wrestler of the Week at the Burlington Hawkeye. So kind of tired after all that, but that's a lot of information, and the rankings are out, and I know kids follow those. So that is the current wrestling rankings of all 3 classes and the girls for Southeast Iowa.
That's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I think, last week we talked about how from an individual standpoint, those rankings, they matter and whatnot, but they'll go out the window, come district's time to some extent. But when you're looking at those early on, I think, the big question is who's the team title hunters, who has a legit shot to win the team race. And with the new format, kind of going forward last year and this year, there's no sectionals to regional duels to, then state duels. It's a lot different where the state is now ranking the teams. And if you get, ranked high enough, then you get to go to those regional duels. So the rankings really do matter for the teams. You mentioned Don Bosco a lot there, Shane. To me, they're the clear-cut favorite. They're ranked number 1 with Wilton at number 2. But I do think it'll be a good team race for that 3rd and maybe even 2nd team trophy, depending on kind of what happens in 1A. In 2A, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that Osage is the clear favorite. They have some nationally ranked wrestlers, a couple D1 commits. Mount Vernon's 2nd, Creston's 3rd. I think there'll be a good race there for those other 2 team trophies. In 3A, Southeast Polk's ranked number 1. My cousin Sam is an assistant coach on that team. Bettendorf is ranked 2nd, and he feels like Bettendorf is probably their biggest competition. But I think Waukee Northwest made a big splash this week. They won the Council Bluffs tournament, which is one of the biggest tournaments in the Midwest. It's just grown. It's crazy. And so Fort Dodge is actually 3rd. Waukee Northwest upset them by 12 points or so. They both had over 400 points at this tournament. The team to watch out for in the area is Columbus Junction, Winfield, Mount Union. They're on a tear right now. They beat Assumption, Williamsburg, West Burlington, Notre Dame twice in the last week. They just won the Colfax Mingo tournament where they won 5 straight duels yesterday. And the thing about them is they have 2 kids at every weight. They have some returners. They don't have a lot of guys that you would think are hammers. You mentioned Coyle, who is a place winner. He's ranked 4th at heavyweight. But they just don't have a weak weight where you have an out. You got to send a decent wrestler out there at all 14 weight classes. And so, I'm excited to watch them. But as we kind of get into this week and what's happened, you mentioned a lot of guys that I'm going to kind of talk about. One thing that's really exciting to me in watching, some of these duels online and in person is just kind of the pageantry and the theatrics that go into it now. You see, like Mr. White does at New London with like the Evel Knievel style, introductions, and you see wrestling mats up on platforms. Union and Osage had a duel this week where they turned out all the lights and they just had the one spotlight on center circle. And, I think that adds a lot as a fan and gets people excited, to watch the sport. The match of the week for me was number 1 ranked Anders Kittleson, 2-time finalist, Air Force recruit from Osage, taking on Caleb Olson. and it was a 3-2 match, and it looked like two college wrestlers out there where guys could get in on shots, but the defense was so good. That was at 150 pounds. I really enjoyed watching that one. And then another guy you mentioned, Tucker Stangl from Osage, took on, so he's in 2A, took on number 2 ranked Kellen Smith from West Hancock, who's ranked number 4 in 1A. And that was a 5-3 decision. Stangl, the defending champ, he has not lost a match now as an upperclassman. He was a champion as a freshman. He got 4th as a sophomore. He won it last year and went undefeated. And so he still has not lost. So that's a team, Osage, to watch for, and a couple guys to watch for. But I thought all 4 of those guys in those matches, even the losers, will be names that you'll hear kind of down the road. So going back to that Council Bluffs. Have you ever been to Council Bluffs?
I have never been to Council Bluffs.
It's kind of the armpit of Iowa. Love you, Council Bluffs people. But, you go across the river, downtown Omaha is very nice. Council Bluffs, not the nicest place, but they have one of the nicest tournaments. So over 800 wrestlers, 14 mats, 6 states were represented in this tournament, over 100 schools. So it was a boy and girl tournament kind of going on simultaneously. There were some nationally ranked matches. There was a number 5 versus number 14 nationally. Several number 1 ranked guys. A couple of them went down. You talked about Drew Ayala. He had a really tough match. He's ranked number 2 right now from Fort Dodge. Probably the difference in if Fort Dodge wins versus Waukee Northwest, he lost in the finals, which was an upset. He lost to a kid who out of Omaha, but Waukee Northwest came away the champion. And you look at some of the key matchups in that were head-to-head that kind of made the difference, and maybe some bonus points would have helped too. So number 1, Carter Freeman versus number 3, Coy Davison. That was a one that actually went Fort Dodge's way. But there was a lot of those just highly touted matches between those schools. It was almost like a duel within a tournament, which is fun to see. And then this wrestler who I've seen his name, and I think I'm going to probably start watching for him a little more, Weston Porter. So he wrestled for Iowa Blue as a youth. He has won some nationally ranked matches. He's from Lewis Central. He's a freshman. He's still undefeated. Obviously, he hasn't had a lot of matches under his belt yet. But when you win a tournament like that at Fort Dodge, at Council Bluffs, that's huge. So those are kind of some of my highlights, Danny, of just a really good week on the boys' side of high school wrestling, I guess.
Well, I have to take a quick sidestep on. I cover basketball as well for the Burlington Hawkeye, and you're exactly right about the showmanship that these schools have started to put together. Give a shout out to West Burlington on their video board that they have. They had a boys basketball intro that I'm sure would rival anything that any college could do. It was really kind of cool, and I'm guessing that when we get a chance to check out some wrestling down at West Burlington, we'll have a similar type of show. The lights go off and they ratchet up the enthusiasm quite a bit. Everything's way more theatrical than when I was in high school. When I was in high school, it was you'd go to a match and the mat would be in the middle of the floor and they just kind of go, those are the 2 guys, and that was it. Right. So that is what, are we seeing a little bit of the college atmosphere trickling down into the high school atmosphere? I think we are. You're right about these high school kids. From what I've seen, they're so good defensively. I mean, a takedown is hard earned at the upper levels when we're getting into they've been trained for years. It's just obvious, and a takedown is difficult to get, and they're so skilled with the counters and stuff. So it's going to be an exciting wrestling season. These rankings you're right. I mean, you have to do it on the mat. It's just kind of fun for us to talk about, and it does give you a picture of who to look for when February rolls around. Yeah,
I'd agree. And speaking of kind of pageantry part of it, maybe not the theatrics, I got to talk to Cody Van Tiger this week, and he's doing this pretty cool program where there's a couple sets of singlets floating around in the state of Iowa that are military based. He does it for the National Guard. I've never felt so dumb in my life, so I was actually broadcasting the Columbus Junction, Winfield, Mount Union versus Mount Pleasant meet, and I'm going through my colors of the game segment, And I'm talking about how I don't really get why these uniforms are gold and black with all this USA stuff on them, but they're awesome, and I'm loving it. And I haven't seen the girls set that's floating around Iowa, but I've heard they're way cooler than the boys, and the boys are sweet. That kind of adds to it too. When you have different sets of singlets, and you see a lot of teams, they'll bring out a different set maybe for the finals, or for at state, maybe the medal rounds. And so, that adds to it as well.
Speaking of girls, we've got the Mediapolis girls wrestling team coming up shortly. But Shane, we were talking about the girls, and we were talking about college level. So I want to talk about your interview you had with William Penn's coach, Jake Kadel. And then you spoke with Mia Palumbo, who I think is number 1 at 109 weight class.
Mia Palumbo is the real deal, Danny. I didn't think we would latch an interview with her. I don't know if it was pure luck or whether Jake was looking out for me a little bit, but I'd scheduled an interview with Jake, and I just wanted to talk about college wrestling and female wrestling in general. He's got 2 really, really, really good wrestlers, and Mia Palumbo might be the more famous of the 2. And one of my last questions was just going to be, talk to us about Mia Palumbo. And I hear magic words coming over the phone. It's like, well, she's sitting right here. And I'm like, okay. So I kind of had to do a little YouTube research, which is something fun to talk about as far as the Wrestlecast, is just how you can couple rankings and YouTube videos now in our broadcasts and other Wrestlecasts, and you can get a pretty good picture of these athletes before you actually see them in person and whatnot. But she is just an incredibly entertaining person to talk to and listen to. I did some research on Mia. Iowa, as you may know, is now ranked number 1 in NCAA. I don't know how William Penn would stack up in the women's rankings if they were NCAA. Right now they're NAIA. At 109, Ava Bayless of Iowa is ranked number 2, and I stumbled across a YouTube video with Mia. She beats Ava pretty handily, and this girl has a very interesting story. Kind of like the stories that we're about to hear from our Mediapolis. I mean, what got her started? What kind of obstacles did she overcome? She started dropping some names of wrestlers that you'll definitely recognize. They're NCAA All-Americans now, and she was just wrestling in the room, and she was holding her own with them for when they were kids. So we're probably going to have to revisit Mia after a couple more weeks. She's competing in a very prestigious tournament, U.S. Nationals. It's an Olympic type event where only the best of the best are invited. So we'll be looking for those results in the next week or 2. You said something about Christmas shopping. I was like, I already got my Christmas gift. This girl, I joked with her and said, so you're like the Spencer Lee of women's wrestling? And she kind of said, well, I could probably beat Spencer Lee. And I know she was joking, but I mean, she's got swagger. She's got, and she looks, check out her YouTube videos. She looks like she could, knock on your door someday and see if you needed your driveway swept out or something like that. Just the American dream of local wrestling could be in our backyard at William Penn. So,
all right, let's have a listen with some of the interview with Coach Kadel, and then we'll hear from Mia.
Wrestlecast is glad to get a hold of Jake Kadel, who is not only a 4-time place winner for New London at the Iowa State Wrestling Tournament, but has went on to participate at the University of Iowa Wrestling Room, where he learned his craft to the point he has gone on to become one of the premier wrestling coaches in Iowa, and now he's at William Penn University. There's a lot to talk about here, so we hope we can have several interviews with Jake throughout the year. Kind of give our listeners your wrestling resume and share some of the experiences you had in that Iowa Wrestling Room. And as a side note, just how influential was Mark Cherry and Brian Swafford in your development, and kind of give us how the New London Wrestling Room prepared you for the rigors of the Iowa Wrestling Room.
In the New London Wrestling Room, they had obviously a rich tradition there. They've had a lot of really good wrestlers coming out of that program in the past, and I was very fortunate to be in a position where I had really good role models to look up to. My freshman year, we probably had one of the best senior classes to go through New London there to look up to. We had Johnny Siegel, state champ. Jarrett Cherry was a state champ. We had Jake Lurdle, he was a state champ. And then we had Josh Allen was in there too, multiple-time placer. Jaden Allen was in there. He was those individuals and looked up to them a lot. And then, I mean, I think just coming from a small school too, we had to learn to work hard. You know, we didn't have like all of the maybe big city opportunities for the newest in technique or whatnot, I guess you could say, from like maybe bigger schools might have more of an advantage in that aspect of things. So we kind of obviously had to rely on hard work and things like that. So I would say a lot of that stuff kind of put me in a good position. And then ultimately, I mean, at Iowa, it was just a good fit for me all around for everything that I was looking for. You know, in sixth grade is kind of when I started going up there for club practices and things like that. So I was in there for a little bit, and then we ended up moving up to Cedar Rapids. But that, and then like obviously my plan was to go to medical school. They had a good med school there, and it was close to home. It was in the state of Iowa. They had obviously one of the best programs in the country, so that was attractive. And then you got the best coaches in the world there too. So pretty much it had everything that was appealing to me. And but yeah, just during your time there, I mean, we made a lot of really good relationships with people there. And I think just within the coaching world, I'd say the University of Iowa has a lot of the top wrestling coaches in the country have came from the University of Iowa, you know, so just having those wrestling connections and then just the mindset that we learned during our time there ultimately kind of put us in a good spot for where we're at doing what we do now kind of deal.
So a long time ago, I interviewed some women's basketball coaches. My question was along the lines of the future of women's wrestling. And Bill Finley of Iowa State told me that in about 25 years, women's basketball would probably be on the same level as men's basketball as far as the Final Four was concerned. I wrote it down and I typed it up, but I wasn't really thinking he was on the right track with that because I'd been to some Iowa games that were very short, 2,000 people were there. Well, it turns out that Bill Finley's probably right. And I asked Jake Kadel what his thoughts on women's wrestling would be, and you'd be surprised to hear his answer.
I'd say high school wise, obviously it's continuing to skyrocket with numbers and things like that, you know. So in that aspect of things, it's getting a lot bigger. There's a lot more opportunities at the college level too now with JUCOs, D3s, D2s, NAIA, you know, and then really University of Iowa is the only D1 program kind of that's relevant, I guess, D1 wise right now. So I mean, yeah, I think just overall in the state is going to continue to grow. The competitiveness within the girls is going to get a lot more technical, I guess you could say. And, I mean, they got a lot of really good girls coming up through the ranks right now. So, overall, I think, it'll be in a good spot here within the next couple of years. But I mean, university wise, I don't foresee there being another big school like the University of Iowa, I guess you could say, that will be popping up anytime soon, supposedly. So at least within, supposedly, I wouldn't think there'll be another Power 5 school within the minimum of 5 years at least.
I asked Jake about, since Iowa is a Power 5 program, whether or not that was the wave of the future for all big Division I schools, especially Wrestler Powers. And I was surprised to hear what he had to say about that.
Yeah, for sure. And really the only reason why Iowa has a women's wrestling program now is because they had a Title IX lawsuit. And so they had to add a women's program, I believe. And then Iowa women's wrestling was kind of it was being talked about, I think. And so that's kind of why I think it got added. But obviously there's a big financial hurdle for a lot of institutions to try to add women's wrestling, I believe, just from my understanding, at the Division I level. And so I think from what I've heard, that's kind of why. But yeah, recruiting wise, I mean, obviously it's tough to recruit against that just because they can pick from the cream of the crop kind of deal, you know, so.
I asked Jake about Iowa Wesleyan as a program. He was the head coach of women and men there. And as we know, Wesleyan closed, and he had a very interesting story about how he found out about it.
I didn't believe it at first, you know. But yeah, I mean, I was supposed to go meet with the recruit later that day at like 10 o'clock in the morning. And then, yeah, I think 8 a.m. or something like that, I got a phone call saying to check my email. And then like I said, I'm not very good at checking my email, but so I had to check my email, and I saw that we were supposed to have an emergency staff meeting, and I actually missed that meeting because I wasn't anticipating that, obviously, and so I ended up, because I was living in Iowa City at the time, and so I ended up driving back down. We had a team meeting right away, and I think the students found out about an hour right after we did. So I think our meeting was supposed to be at 8, and then the students had a meeting at 9 o'clock, I believe. And then we had obviously an emergency team meeting at 10 o'clock right after that. So, but yeah, it was kind of hectic, just trying to calm everybody down and stay optimistic that it's just kind of hearsay, and that maybe we potentially have the opportunity to still try to fix things or figure out a way to keep the school afloat kind of deal. But obviously I didn't know all the details. I still don't, but turns out it was kind of too far gone kind of deal. So, but yeah, so that was kind of my experience with it. But ultimately, it kind of worked out for us, in the grand scheme of things. So we had a lot of really good support and things like that there. So, and obviously it was traumatic for the students too, because they went through 2-3 years of school there, and that was kind of their home. And then you got to kind of pick up and relocate. And then even some of our kids, I think, are still struggling with that a little bit, So yeah, definitely was not a good situation overall.
Like I said, this is just the surprise of the week for me. I didn't know Mia was going to be sitting in Jake's office when I talked to him, but we got about a nice 5-6 minute interview with Mia Palumbo, who's ranked number 1 in NAIA at 109, and be interesting to see where she'd be ranked or how she'll fare in the upcoming wrestling meets. All
right, so we'll play this interview with Mia, and I just want to mention that we do have very long interviews with Coach Kadel and Mia that we couldn't include the whole entirety of, so what we'll do is we'll post both those interviews up here on the Wrestlecast. Let's hear from Mia.
I started wrestling when I was pretty young, and my dad coached me all the way through high school, so I think that had a big part to do with it. I wrestled at a club called Victory Elite, and there's a lot of high-level athletes there. I think just training hard really all year round is how we've gotten to where I am today.
What we're finding here in Iowa, at least at the local level, is there are a few girls that are interested in getting involved in wrestling, but there's nobody to really wrestle against, so they just kind of lose interest. Did you kind of have, Oaklawn's near Chicago, so it's maybe a different situation, but did you have a little bit of that problem growing up?
When I was growing up, I didn't really wrestle against the girls. So I just competed against guys all the way through high school until college, then I started wrestling the women.
Did any of those guys turn out to be high school champs or guys that went on to college, and maybe you beat them when you were... Yeah. Can you drop some names?
The person who won my bracket my freshman year was Dean Hamidi. I've wrestled with Vincent Robinson. He goes to NC State. I've wrestled against Jesse Mendez. I've wrestled against a bunch of those guys, yeah.
And how'd you fare when you wrestled against them?
Not great.
What's that?
I didn't do too great.
Well,
just being in the room with some of them as well just was a great opportunity.
Well, the names you just dropped are NCAA All-American type names, so I wouldn't sell yourself short on what you said. I was not doing so great against them. That's pretty impressive. You're ranked number 1, if I read what I read correctly, and you've been in the national finals twice in a row, and you're a junior now. What are your goals for this year?
Well, I have U.S. Nationals coming up, so hope to do pretty well there. And then just Nationals at the end of the year as well. I want to win that.
Okay, you said you were interested in physical therapy a little bit. What kind of things do women wrestlers train? You know, it can't be all bulk. It has to be cardio. Can you kind of take us through what a women training regiment looks like?
For me, at least, I know I lift like about 2 days a week, and I'll do cardio maybe once or twice a week before practices, and then every day other than that, I've been wrestling.
I do appreciate you talking to us at the Wrestlecast, and we hope to get a hold of your coach and you in the future and kind of see how the season's going. Would that be okay?
Yes, sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Mia. That's Mia Palumbo, number 1 ranked at 109, I believe, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, she's the number 1 ranked wrestler, female, in NAIA at 109. And we look for big things to happen for her and Coach Jake Kadel of the William Penn Statesman. So I appreciate your time, both of you.
All right, we're joined now by some of kind of the main members of the current Mediapolis wrestling program that's growing all the time. And so I'll start with you, Kaya Swafford, kind of a wrestling family, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of ingrained in your DNA. Now with girls wrestling really kind of taking off, what has that done for you, kind of knowing that you'll be able to go out there, just like your family members have done before you?
I think it's kind of cool. I don't really know why, though.
Was there ever a point when you were a little bit younger, like going to, wrestling tournaments and things, where you kind of envisioned girls wrestling being just as big maybe one day as the boys wrestling?
Yeah, I guess.
So you're going to be in junior high this year. You're in junior high, right?
Yeah.
So you haven't wrestled a junior high match yet. You're in 7th grade.
Correct. I haven't done that yet.
Okay. As you try to grow the sport, I guess, what do you do as a wrestler, as a participant, when you're walking the halls of Mediapolis to try to get other girls to kind of join you and build this program up? Like, what's your sell to the other girls in your class to maybe steal them from basketball or another sport?
I've asked a few of my friends to join, but none of them really wanted to.
Did they tell you why?
Mm-mm. I mean, some of them just don't play sports.
What I'm finding, maybe you're seeing the same thing, is that initial pitch has just been hard to get some of these girls to participate. It's something new. You can say it's fun all you want, but if they don't believe it, it's just hard to get them out. Is that what you're kind of finding too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You've been at it for a few weeks. Kind of give us a rundown of what's been going on, stuff that we wouldn't see. What's practice like?
It's like sometimes it's easy, but then other times it's like kind of hard.
Do you have is the guys in the wrestling room with you?
I've been going to a few youth practices for MUPO, and so yeah, but they're all younger.
Is it hard to get that first couple of matches, even in practice situation? Is there still that initial boy versus girl awkwardness still going on?
No, because there's enough girls in there for everyone to like have a partner. Because my sister, she does it with me, so I have her as my partner.
Mm-hmm. Gage alluded to earlier the Swafford name in wrestling. There's some code in your DNA that probably got you interested. Was there something that really just made you say, let's get this thing started. Let's get going on this?
Well, my dad, he started this Penn Doctors wrestling media on Facebook and stuff, and we've just always been a wrestling family, and I've pretty much done it since like 2018, which I was like 8 years old. So, but then I stopped for a few years, and then I came back to it last year.
So Kenna, we'll kick it to you. You have to do a pitch, and it can't be you're going to work really hard, you're going to sweat a bunch, you're probably going to be sore. How do you get more girls to join this sport? I'll let you pitch me like I'm a junior high girl and you're trying to get me to go out.
My friends are like really athletic. We do sports, every sport in the book. And I don't know, I feel like if you don't try something new, you're never going to know, if you like it or not. And my friend Payne Harris, I got her to join. She's my absolute best friend. We do softball together. I told her, I was like, I know you really want to. We all want you to. And she was like, yeah, I'll just give it a shot. And I was like, yeah, you're never going to know if you like it if you don't do it. So that's kind of what I did, I guess. But everybody I've asked to join wanted to join. So I guess that's...
You're a good recruiter.
Yeah, I guess so. Not very hard.
So I'm a high school principal. So one thing that I see, I feel like this is a day and age where maybe kids avoid doing things that are harder. How do you get them to kind of buy in on this is a tough sport physically and mentally, that isn't necessarily easy, but if you can get through it, there are a lot of, rewards you can reap.
Yeah, I guess I kind of had to see it for myself and like my point of view. I had to really like figure out how I truly felt about it to persuade others to do it too. Like I had to really think about, is this something I really want to do, to be able to persuade other people to do it too. Because if I want the challenge, I know my friends will too, because they're just like me. They're competitive. They want to win. They're strong. They're determined. They're that type of thing. So yeah, I guess.
Other than your hand being raised after a match, which is probably one of the best feelings a human could have, right? You just went out in a circle and, your stuff was better than somebody else's. What has been enjoyable for you? Maybe the most enjoyable parts so far of this girls wrestling?
I love the competition. I like being pushed to my full limit. I don't want people to go easy on me. I don't want to feel good after a practice. I want to feel tired and exhausted, like I did something. So yeah, that's, I guess.
Well, listening to your answer, that's what this whole venture of the Wrestlecast is about, kind of sort of what makes a wrestler a wrestler. Now, I'm going to say everything you said at the end there was right on target there, but that's not something I want to go through. I mean, how hard is it to tell your friends and get your people to join? Is there a way you're kind of reaching kids in your class and the school with that approach?
Yeah, I want to take no for an answer, and I'm very determined, and I will do anything it takes to win, especially. And I know my friends would do the same, and I tell them every day, I'm like, if you want to be the best, then you have to push yourself to be the best. It's not going to come to you. You have to earn it, and that's what I live by. And I don't let anybody give me anything. I earn it, and that's just, that's how it is, I guess. And that's how it is for my friends too. So that's how I got people to come out or go out for wrestling.
Even though you're not even in high school yet, are you starting to follow what goes on at Iowa and William Penn? And
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. I watch Iowa girls wrestling all the time, and they really inspire me to be better. My cousin Kaylin Hitchcock, she wrestles for Kansas, and she's like the state champion, and she's like really, really good. And she wrestled boys, and she was told that she couldn't do it, and she did it anyways, and she pushed herself, and she's very, very inspiring, and she earned every bit of it, and she is a very hard worker, and it's really important that, I want to do the same. So,
well, I think from my standpoint, as you sat and heard us introduce the Mia Palumbo interview, is when you go down the roster of college programs, hardly any of them's from Iowa.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all from Illinois or Texas or whatever. Do you feel like, at least for your role in Southeast Iowa, it's important to get women's wrestling to the level where these local colleges have a roster full of Iowa people?
I would love to be the one I would love to be the first Iowa wrestler. I would love to be the first person that college coach sees on rosters. I would love to get my name out there to college coaches and, that type of thing. So, yeah.
We'll be looking for your progression through the years. And Avery, what can you tell us about yourself? And don't mind that sweaty microphone that you just got from Kenna.
Avery, we kind of talked about Kenna and Kaya, kind of where they got inspired a little bit with wrestling. They both have family members that are some big time wrestlers. Where do you fit in? Like, do you have some family that kind of got you involved, or what made you interested?
Yeah, my brother has been wrestling since he was little, and I've always gone to his meets and stuff. I never really thought about actually wrestling until I went to the state tournament, and there was a bunch of girls there, and I'm like, oh, I could actually do this, and I don't know. Yeah.
So we haven't talked any moves yet. So when people come watch the bullets out there in the circle, what are they going to see? What's going to be some go-to staples for bullet wrestling?
Yeah, the chicken wing. Single leg, half, double, cradle. I don't know, really.
If I could interject here, I want to ask all three of you girls a question. And if you could just give me a name, who is your inspiration, or who do you look up to, say, at the college or high school level?
Kaylin Hitchcock.
I don't know, honestly. I don't know.
My uncle Brennan.
I was gonna say, you better say an uncle or or your father.
He wrestles for the Hawkeyes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's pretty much, mine.
Honestly, I don't really know. I don't.
It's okay. You can think about it. We can always edit out the space in between your thoughts.
You named a lot of good moves. I think from watching like wrestling over the years, you see schools that are really good, like technically, and you see some schools that you can tell like they just work really hard and maybe they don't have all the technique, but they're just really gritty. What style do you think you'll put out there on the mat? Like if someone had to describe you, Avery Hollingsworth out there on the mat, this is how she wrestles. Like how do you think someone would describe you that's watching you wrestle?
Probably like scrappy and aggressive.
But you're so small and so timid.
I don't know. I just like to win, and I'll do like anything I can to win, I guess. I'll put in the work and stuff.
How do you like the part where you train? Like we kind of alluded to before, you can have a physical education class where you're begging the kids to do just some basic exercises. What do you like about training for wrestling?
I like putting in the work, and like after I'm done, like I know that I've done good if I'm like sweating and I'm tired, and yeah.
All three of you seem like you're probably pretty hard workers, and I will say I wouldn't want to meet the five of you in a dark alley. I also feel like, nice people, but could all turn it on. I'm going to kick this one to Coach Johnson. We were kind of talking when you came in here about your background and how at that point in time, when you were growing up, there wasn't as many opportunities, for girls. Tell us a little bit about that, because I feel like that's helped us to get to where we are today. Some of the opportunities you had to just fight to stay in the practice room just to whoop up some boys in practice.
That I did.
You didn't really get the opportunity to necessarily go out there, and compete for your school, which was Burlington, right?
Well, I went to West Burlington.
West Burlington. Sorry. That
No,
might
okay.
have been fighting
It's all
words.
right.
But
it's okay.
will you just tell us a little bit just kind of how you've got to this point, I guess, today?
So my brother was wrestling in the youth wrestling program at Burlington. And I was in first grade. My dad actually went up to the youth wrestling coach and had asked the wrestling coach if I could wrestle. And he turned my dad and I away and said no. And so my dad, questioned him and everything. And he said, maybe next year. I was like, okay, all right. Well, he just didn't want a girl on the wrestling mat. And so I went out for it next year, the following year. So I was in second grade, my dad again. And also it was in the middle of the season, my first grade year. And he didn't like that. So my second grade year, my dad asked if I could wrestle, and he still didn't want me on the mat, but he went ahead and let me. But there was one stipulation. It was I had to keep up with the guys. And if I didn't, I was pretty much off the youth wrestling team because I was a female and I couldn't keep up. Well, I actually did keep up. And so I just stuck with it. And I had coaches, Jim Doreen. Jim definitely made it to where I had to, keep up with the guys. He pushed me a lot. And I just stuck with it and continued on.
You're almost put in like a no-win situation and still kind of proved that youth coach wrong.
Well, I didn't like being told I wasn't allowed to do something. And so it gave me even more of a drive to want to do it.
Do you think that helps you today now as a coach when, your story is you had a lot of barriers to be a part of the sport that you ended up really enjoying and obviously love because you're still involved in it. But now these girls have, the opportunity. Do you feel like that background kind of helps you as a coach?
It wasn't just, it definitely will, for sure, because I know going through the things that I went through every age group that I had wrestled in and through, junior high and high school and the other coaches that didn't want me to be out there on the mat wrestling. And, you know, there was kids that forfeited, and there was coaches that didn't want to shake my hand because I had just beat their kid, and just because I was wrestling boys. There was a lot of people that didn't like it. And so I was given a lot of flack. So it wasn't just from the beginning, it was throughout the whole thing. So it caused me to be an even stronger person, because going through that and still sticking with it and pushing through it and wanting to accomplish something like that, just to prove to not only myself but to others that, you know, this isn't just a guy's sport.
Right.
That girls can do things just as well as men. And I think I did pretty well at proving that.
You have a very strong presence about you. And that resistance was probably part of it.
It made me mentally strong, and it actually, not only mentally but also emotionally, and to be honest with you, it has made me build a more sense of understanding people. It teaches you a lot of life lessons, wrestling does. It helps you, I mean, it helped me through college. It helped me to find who I was. It helped me to understand myself and to see how other people see situations. And I mean, my degree's in social work, so I literally can understand more now going through what I went through, going through wrestling, than I think than I ever would have if I hadn't.
So you have these three girls here. You have some more girls in your program that aren't here with us today. But
correct.
You're growing it right now. These junior high kids will eventually spill into this high school program, and the Bullets will be off and running. We kind of talked about this a little before we started this broadcast, but right now there's the one class, a little bit bigger state tournament, but it's a little different than the boys that have the 1A, 2A, 3A. Where do you think this will go? I mean, we can't possibly know, but where do you see this going?
I see in a couple years that girls wrestling is going to have to be divided. It will eventually, because as it is growing, it will eventually have to be divided. And as of right now, no, it's not going to be, but I can see within the next couple of years, with how wrestling is growing, it is going to have to be divided, just as it is male.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
What is we talked about a wrestler's mentality here on our last show. What is a female wrestler's mentality, and how is it different from a guy's?
Well, to be honest with you, when I was wrestling, I actually had to think of myself as not female, because I had to do everything that the guys did at practice, because I had to keep up with the guys. And so I was no different from anybody else in that wrestling room. And so if they were lifting weights, I was lifting weights and just as much as them. They were doing laps, I was doing laps. We were under the mats.
So no mercy.
No mercy. You literally have to have a mentality of give it all or nothing, because it is going to drain you mentally and physically, but it is also going to build you up from the bottom to the top.
Well, I'm impressed so far with just your ability to get kids to participate. And just what are your thoughts on some of our local area schools? Have they been successful so far in starting female programs? I know some schools have struggled, and some
there are some schools that are struggling because I mean girls wrestling is still new, but there are bigger schools that are more successful, that they actually have the program booming. But around here there are schools that are still struggling, but they are still growing. Just as, we are here, we are starting, we are going to grow, and we are going to be big.
I won't say it's a stigma, but, you hear stories, and frankly, I don't know if they're true, but they're, that girls were asked 20 years ago to be on the wrestling team, and if the other team doesn't have a weight, we'll raise your hand, you'll get the forfeit, and you'll give our team 6 points. But it's gone way beyond that now. I mean, these girls are very good at what they do. Can you talk just a little bit about how the last 20 years has progressed, and maybe look at the next 20 years?
I don't really know how to answer that, because every season is different. It's going to progress differently. It could also, decrease. I mean, it just depends on, the year, and every class has, there could be 8 junior high girls going up into high school that want to stick with it. But there also could only be a season where there's all seniors wrestlers. So it really all depends on, if the girls want to go out or not.
I think with any school of Southeast Iowa that, every sport goes through its cycle, and you're right, there's times where some schools have a difficult time putting a softball team out there, or a girls track team that has, or a boys track team for that matter, that has more than just a handful of people. So you obviously have challenges ahead, just like any coach would, but that's kind of what we're trying to look at here at the Wrestlecast, is just what does it take to get these things going and keep them going?
Oh, a lot. A lot of support and dedication, and lots of scheduling. So, but a lot of talk, a lot of conversations, and a lot of, there's a lot of girls that'll be back and forth that they say they want to do it, but I always say, at least come to a practice. You don't even have to wrestle, just watch. And, if you want to come to the second practice, just get on the mat. You don't even have to do the full practice. I'm not saying baby steps, but I'm definitely saying that you join at your pace. Would I like to see you just jump out on that mat? Yeah, I would. But I'm not going to throw someone out with the wolves if they're not ready.
Sure. I think if you, in 4 years from now, only had these 3 girls out and didn't recruit anybody else, you'd still have a pretty exciting team.
Of course.
I'm excited to see these 3. I do want to ask Coach Marshall a question since you're here. Iowa football recruits a lot of wrestlers to be their linemen. So as you're looking at girls who maybe have wrestled, maybe they haven't, and you're trying to get some to come over to the light. I called it the dark side last week, but over to the light. Who are you looking for? Like, what type of person? Because when we talk to these 3, they seem to be 3 pretty mentally tough but nice girls. Who are you trying to get when you bring some girls over to wrestling?
I mean, it being so new still, I think if we just got a bunch of girls out to try it, you don't really know the mental side of it until you see them. I definitely think it takes somebody that's like Cindy was back in the day. I'm not going to take no for an answer kind of attitude, mentality, which, yes, we do have. But like I said, at this point, if you get even a handful of girls that just want to try it, I say we start there. As
coaches, kind of on a new program, building from the ground up. I mean, what are your first few steps? Like, obviously recruiting, but there's so much that goes into being a successful program. Like, where have you 2 started?
From the bottom, yeah, like Cindy said. Basically had the help of Jim Drain to get this going as well. You just got to get the word out there. You hope you get girls. You try to get them on the mat, whether it's start a camp or just come into the youth practices to see what it's like. Like I said, Avery, she's watched her brother for years wrestle. So he's taught her some moves already, but building the program, it's been a struggle, but then you got to work your way into, okay, now you've got a separate team. We need time in the gym. We need time out there. We got to figure out how to make everybody's schedule work. Based on the whole building the team thing, you take these girls who haven't had the chance yet, so they're already in a background of we've played basketball for years. And that's where your problem's going to be when you're building a team. A lot of them are already dedicated to other sports. They've never tried it before. So that's where I'm hoping this whole half season, since, basically we're going to start at the first of the year where it's going to be, okay, you guys are done with basketball. Now come try this. Hopefully we get more girls out.
I know you have more than Winfield Mount Union because they have 1.5. There's one girl that's kind of fence riding, one that's all in.
Yeah.
So hopefully they'll get some more. But what do you think as a coach will be the biggest thing to kind of inspire? Because we kind of talked at the beginning, I think you guys were listening a little, just like when you put a mat up on a podium like they do in some of those college meets, or, you turn off the lights and you shoot the fireballs up. Like, I don't know. Those things I think get fans riled up. But when you're talking about young girls who are maybe kind of, deciding what they might do. And I think also the parents, the more you have wrestling and they're exposed to it, parents that are now all in on my, little girl can go out there and whoop some butt on the mat too. How do you sell them all and get them all?
I don't know if whether it's they need to we get tickets and take them all to an Iowa duel and watch them. Maybe that'll get them all excited.
That couldn't hurt.
Right. Who's going to pay for that one? But I will say,
Start a GoFundMe.
Right. I will say, Beans, I've been included in the youth program for 6 years. Even watching the mental state of some of those kids come through, you start young and they lost a match and they're upset. You don't always have that hand raised glory, but watching them progress, like Cindy had said, mentally, it's crazy how they've learned to compose themselves and take it as like, okay, now I need to do this and this and this. And so I don't really think it's like the raise a hand of glory kind of feeling. I know that feeling is probably amazing, but even to watch some of the girls when we've gone to bigger tournaments, like just the excitement as in, hey, we had a close match with this girl. We didn't go out there and get our butts beat by this girl. I mean, that's a step right there.
I have a question. If we're done with Lindsay here, I have a question for, everyone, actually. I want to ask you, what is your wrestling nickname? And this is Avery. Are you going to...
Monsters, Inc. Scrappy?
I will say that I watched these two kind of go at it the other night at one of my youth practices, and feisty. I mean,
really?
Yes. I mean, she is strong, and her brother's the same way though. They're like Stringbane. That's it.
Stringbane.
Yes, Cole and her. They're both, but they're like solid muscle. So it's like somebody might come out here and be like, "Oh, no, we got her," and then you're not going to be able to move her.
Stringbane. Okay,
Stringbane. That's it, Avery.
Grand Old Opry.
Kaya, do you have one?
Swaffy, I guess.
Swaff's a pretty good one.
Yeah, Rico Suave. And Cindy, what was yours?
Lou.
Lou, why's that?
I know everyone knows Dr. Seuss.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
My name is actually
Cindy Lou Who.
Cindy Sue Lou Who.
Okay.
But it was really easy just to get my attention by saying Lou.
Lou, okay. All right.
I guess Mom.
Mom? Oh, okay.
Which I will say, I give all the wrestlers praise in the freaking world because I was icing and chiropractor for a month after doing that.
Okay.
I mean,
Not when I get a couple appointments set up.
Right?
All right. Do we have any last questions?
No, I just wanted to thank you all for coming in. It was very interesting to, he's a principal at a small school and I teach at a small school. So we kind of know the struggles you're going through. We'd all like to see wrestling take off on the men's and women's level. So good luck with your struggles to get some more kids to go out and participate. And none of us want to see kids sitting at home doing the video games all day long, and it is a difficult sport. So we compliment your efforts and we wish you the best of luck.
Guys, you've compiled a list of high school and college wrestling names or just high school nicknames?
So we just kind of talked about best wrestling nicknames, and Shane and I didn't share ours. I even made a point to not share mine, and I'll let you go first because we had some of the same names because there's some good ones out there.
This one made me just do a double take to see if I was reading it right. If you have been with us before, you know that we went through the rankings, and I purposely left this one out. But at 126 for Class 1A, he's a junior, he's from Alburnett, and he's definitely my favorite name this year. You have number 3 ranked Rowdy Neighbor. So I wouldn't know Rowdy Neighbor if he walked up to me on the street and introduced himself. But now I'm going to be following this kid's career.
Yeah, he was a finalist last year.
You might not know him if you walked up on the street, but if he was actually your neighbor, you might know him.
I probably would know him for a wrong reason then, because I just can't imagine that somebody would put on a birth certificate the name Rowdy. I'm assuming that's a nickname, but that's what he goes by.
He's born to be a wrestler.
you better have that wrestling mentality if you're going to have that name. But I know you have several others, Gage, so go ahead and share those with us.
Yeah, I guess for my last name, the number 4th ranked NCAA 157-pounder, Brock Mahler. I feel like Mahler is a pretty good, last name for wrestler. And then for the Columbus Junction Winfield Mount Union team, there's two Nelsons, Josie Nelson, who was 16-3 going into her last tournament. She's just on a tear. And Jacob Nelson, who we might see in the rankings next week. He went 5-0 yesterday at the Colfax Mingo tournament. But, I was on the call last week. And I mean, when you have those two Nelsons, you could go Jacob half Nelson, Josie 3/4 Nelson. If they, maybe get a point against them for an illegal move, you could, throw out full Nelson. So, that's the fun part about wrestling. It's just you could really get creative with some nicknames out there.
Well, even her dad's name is kind of a nickname, Dusty Nelson.
Yeah, Dusty Nelson. That's right.
I'd work that in there somewhere.
There used to be a special column in a magazine I read about basketball, and they would highlight these special names. For some reason, I remember this name. He's from Houston Baptist, I believe, and his name was Anisette Lavodrama. And I'm like, that's a name you're going to remember, and I've remembered it for 20 years. So that's what we're trying to do here at the Wrestlecast, is find some of these interesting names and share them with you.
So speaking of nicknames, about every sport has a GOAT or two, Danny. And I think Cael Sanderson's probably in the running, or will be by the time he's done, for GOAT status in the sport of wrestling. I mean, he has his own brand and own shoes and everything. And the Nittany Lions wrestled last week after our show, last Sunday night, actually. And Shane and I were talking about this with the Hawkeye fans kind of on panic alert last week. I just watched the duel, just kind of thinking, what are Penn State fans thinking? And walking away, I feel like they have 6 legitimate title hunters, 6 guys that could be in the finals. But I do think they have 3 weights that are pretty weak and susceptible. So when you're talking about tournaments, this Penn State team, they're ranked number 1 right now in the college ranks. They're just going to score bonus points. Iowa has winners, Penn State has pinners. But in a head-to-head duel, if you match up right, if you can not let those bonus points take place, if you can beat them bad in those 3 kind of weaker spots, and maybe win some head-to-heads, they're definitely beatable. But just kind of going through, they don't have Roman Bravo Young. Those 2 lightweights, 125 and 133, are usually weights that have been pretty good for Penn State. Aaron Nagao is number 4. He had a late win there for Penn State, which was probably a spot they thought they'd get some bonus points. But Bo Bartlett has just kind of come on and, from day one been really good. He had a major, but there's some guys that are really good that looked susceptible. Levi Haynes ranked number 1. He trailed 3-1 early. It was tied 5-5 late. It was a rematch against the guy he'd beat 10-2. He ended up winning, but maybe not as much cushion there as you'd like. Carter Starachi looks like he has no weak spot. 59 straight wins, Shane. He won by fall. They have this new guy, Bernie Trow. He's a Cal Poly transfer. He's ranked 2nd. He won by technical fall. Greg Kirkfleet looked really good. And so, the Nittany Lions definitely have some spots. 197 is a spot. Unfortunately for Iowa, that's not really a major strength. Glazier, has looked okay in there, and some different guys have popped in there at times. But Cael Sanderson, with this win, is now the all-time winningest Penn State coach. With his 10 titles thrown in there as well, he's now won 45 straight duels. So, statement wins for Penn State coming up. Possibly this wasn't necessarily one of them, but some of these main programs kind of have some time off and then some big matches to come. But I thought Penn State overall looked pretty good, but it'll be interesting to see how Penn State and Iowa match up head-to-head later on.
Well, you mentioned 197 as a possibility, and we talked before we reached the air here. Could 197 actually be one of Iowa's better weight classes? And for those of you who I wish I could tell you facts, but AJ Ferrari, what's the situation? Is he going to be at Iowa this year? Twitter, which is now X, is just the main. This is a CIA operation for Iowa. They don't tell us anything. AJ, what do you know, Gage? I know that I read where he has taken classes at Kirkwood, and you've seen pictures on the internet. What do you know? Anything that maybe you can't say as a factual news story, but what do you hear, Gage?
I mean, I have a fact for you because I know Danny wants us to stay with the facts over here. It was a fact. He was Matt's side against Columbia Friday, and he was seated directly in between Gabe Arnold, who didn't wrestle, and Ben Keeter, who we also think we might see. You know, there's a lot of rumor, like you said, a lot of speculation. We don't want to talk about a bunch of stuff we maybe don't know, but he was there. His brother is committed. Iowa got a couple big commits, but his youngest brother, because we keep talking about the different brothers, is committed. Angelo Ferrari, he's a class of 2024. AJ's been seen. And then Anthony did wrestle in the Luther Open, is a tournament that some Iowa wrestlers wrestle unattached. So there's definitely, it's like Ferrari sightings. Who's seen the Ferrari, running around town? If they could get him, like you said, that would really solidify that 197. So speaking of those, some other guys who could help Iowa, this is down the road. Iowa got a huge commitment this week from Blair Academy product, Blairstown, New Jersey, Leo DeLuca. He's currently at 157 pounds, but he's the number one ranked prospect in the country. And so he's definitely what you'd probably call blue chip, a big time recruit. And so that's not going to help him this year. You're right. AJ coming in the lineup could help him this year. Gabe Arnold, where will he go? He was the wrestler of the week in the Big Ten this last week. Where do you see him projecting? Because we just had little Kaya Swafford on here. Mm-hmm. I mean, her uncles looked pretty dang good too. There's a lot of possibilities in kind of those upper weights, but where does Gabe go? I think is a big question as well, for what this Hawkeye lineup will look like come February, March.
Well, Iowa is number 4 ranked right now. And I watched the highlights of them against Columbia, and I think what they did was made a case to come out aggressive, wrestle aggressive, not be satisfied with, the Iowa wrestling that we're familiar with, wrestling to the last second. And they dominated Columbia, and Columbia is wrestling UNI right now. So we can kind of get a gauge of what, Columbia is as far as an opponent for Iowa, but they just looked more aggressive. And, I think this first couple of weeks, and we'll know more when the Big Ten season really kicks in and the Soldier Salute in the Midlands, just what is ahead of them. Is this going to be a domino effect where Keeter goes heavyweight, maybe a Ferrari at 197, and will they move Gage or Gabe Arnold to 184, which I think his more natural weight for him is probably 174. I think you hit upon something that Iowa and Penn State are shaping up to be like the Soviets in the United States, 2 superpowers, recruits coming in, transfers coming in. They have a number 1 at a certain weight, we have a number 2 at a certain weight, and they have a number 2 at a certain weight, we have a number 1. It's just going to be, those are the 2 alpha programs that you're going to have to follow. And Cael Sanderson, I said that Tom Brands was probably one of the top 5 coaches of all time. Cael Sanderson might be 1 and 1A with Dan Gable, and that's almost sacrilege to say around here. I know that, but his credentials are piling up to the level of Dan Gable. So that's why we watch. We want to see what's going to happen in the next couple of months and years.
I think for Tom Brands, one thing that Hawkeye fans will definitely judge him for, and he could really win some people over even more so with this lineup, is what will happen at 133 pounds. So going into this Columbia duel, we thought this would be one of the only head-to-head ranked matchups between Brody Teske and Reaney of Columbia. Teske, kind of right on point, former Fort Dodge, then Penn State, then UNI, now Iowa product. Teske did not wrestle. Instead, they threw out Colin Schriever, and Schriever got the upset victory. Teske had beat Schriever in the wrestle-offs, but it was close. It was more, Schriever's better on his feet and better from the top position, it seems like, but Teske just rode him, and Schriever could do nothing from the bottom position. So what happens there at 133 pounds? Or was this just, Tom Brands resting Teske and he's going to be the guy? Or is there a little quarterback competition brewing there between 233 pounders?
I think you've got a quarterback competition going on there. What guy is going to show Brands at 133 that they're the guy, and you can just put the other people on the bench and let them redshirt or transfer out, because 133 has just not been the weight classification that Iowa's been able to turn to since Austin DeSanto. Like I said, Iowa ranked 4th is good for a lot of people, not Tom Brands. So he's got to get a program this year, next year, and the year after that's not competing with Penn State but beating Penn State. So, yeah, I think maybe some internal words have been said that, it's now or never, guys. We got to do this now.
Something that might help this year, we were kind of talking about it earlier, but Shane Van Ness at 149 pounds was ranked number 2, and it's been reported that he's out for the year. Now, sometimes you see these and the school reports he's out for the year, and then he's not actually out for the year. He comes back. But as of now, Penn State has officially said Shane Van Ness, number 2 ranked wrestler, 149 pounds, out for the year. And also, there was a press release. So I was kind of saving this because you asked what's official. There was a press release that said AJ Ferrari is officially enrolled at the University of Iowa. Now, maybe he's just there to get a communications degree, But my guess is he's there to wrestle. So, that's, I think, what the people want. But time will tell with that one. It's interesting timing after this Columbia duel because now the Hawkeyes don't wrestle till after Christmas. Mm-hmm. Could we possibly see AJ Ferrari at the Soldier Salute at the Extreme Arena here come into December?
But, when you say those things, you start doing some math in your head. Okay, so let's put it, this is all hypothetical, but let's play a little bit. Let's put AJ Ferrari at 197. That's a possible 16 team points in the NCAAs, and you take Shane Van Ness out. That's 16 points the other way. Now we've got an interesting ball game going on. If Starachi and
Brooks,
they're just a level above right now. But if some freaky injury happens, we got a whole new game going on. So this is why we're here.
What was that score with Iowa and Columbia?
It was 38-3. Iowa's only loss was Aiden Riggins at 184 pounds. A lot of bonus points, a lot of first period, second period technical falls. And so Iowa looked kind of the opposite of how they looked against Iowa State. Really aggressive and, grinding out some bonus points. But that Schriever victory would be an upset as Angelino Rini was ranked 11th coming in. So that was the big one. I think the highlight of the night.
You guys had mentioned Schriever a little bit ago. Coach Brands, after the Iowa-Columbia meet, had this to say about Schriever, and he was also pretty upset about the recent gambling issues at Iowa and how it's affected not just his athletes, everybody's athletes. And just a warning here, we have this press conference, but we are now using what's called the Brands bleep. And we had to bleep out some things. So anyway, here it is.
All right, questions for Coach?
Speaking of Schriever, you had 4 guys that weighed in at 133.
We're going to weigh in 4 guys at 133 until we figure it out. Schriever took a good step forward. I love it.
What
he wanted the match. He wanted the match. He wanted the match. He's been through this gambling. He wanted the match. He made the most of it. You got 2 other guys that have appeals. See what happens. Schriever, good job back there.
You've got a couple of weeks now until that next competition. What are you looking to improve on in that time?
Improve upon things is a funny word. So, it's coming up. And, the Soldier Salute, that's coming up. But it's coming up. And we were in it a couple of weeks ago. At Penn, we were in it a little bit. But it's coming up. And we have to keep looking to put the best team on the mat, and it is not rocket science to say that we need 10 weight classes contributing. That's what we're looking for. We need 10 weight classes contributing.
What did Cohen show you out there on the mat? What were you impressed with?
He wanted the match. When you want the match and you verbalize it, and then you make the most of the opportunity, and things weren't going his way, he dug himself out of a hole. And there's some things that, that you look for. They're admirable qualities.
Is this progress tonight?
Like I said, you talk about improvement, progress. Those are funny words to me. They're funny words to me. They don't jive in my world, really, because you go week to week and you're like a yo-yo. And we got to be very steady. And we have to keep looking to put the best ingredients on the map for this team. Whatever those ingredients are, those are the ones that need to be on that map.
Cael Brachi got his first start tonight. What did you see out of him? First start.
I saw a guy that can hit holds, and he's been a little bit hesitant in the past and a little bit maybe inconsistent, and he's hitting holds. And he's got more to show, too. That match, you're going to blow that match out. And he did a good job getting the bonus points, but you can really blow that match out.
Overall, do you think the team was more aggressive and offensive compared to some previous matches?
That's another one of those questions that doesn't really jive with me right now. We got to put our best people on that wrestling mat, and the charge was led by Drake Ayala. And we had a guy that hasn't even been able to compete, and he made the most of it. And I'm
all right. Thanks, Tom.
Awesome.
That was Coach Tom Brands at the press conference after the Iowa-Columbia meet. We were talking about the Iowa Hawkeyes and the Cyclones. Where do they stack up right now?
Both teams are getting ready for finals, so there's not much wrestling action until about the Soldier Salute and the Midlands tournaments coming up. Just a real Pitt versus Iowa State. We'll have a broadcast in between that, but I can say that Pitt's a very good team. They just beat Ohio State. So
I think Iowa State's probably put themselves on the outside looking in for that fourth team trophy. It's kind of weird. The top four get a team trophy at the NCAAs. Iowa's definitely in the hunt, though, for 1 through 4, but right now they're ranked 4, so they're going to have to prove that they can get a little higher than that. But, I think we've talked about it quite a bit at this point, Shane, that Iowa, if they have a shot, it's going to be probably in March. They're not going to be the number 1 ranked team, or look like it probably before then, because there's just a lot of things they have to figure out. But the potential is definitely there, and it's not just a wishful fan thinking. I mean, it's legitimate. They have some dudes, but it'll have to come to shape.
Do you think that we mentioned 133 and we mentioned Gabe Arnold? Do you think Brands, just opinions, holding his cards close to the vest and seeing what we can do in March? And it used to be we'll put our number 1 guys out there and we'll wrestle and we'll wrestle and we'll wrestle some more. Maybe we're gonna take the foot off the throttle a little bit and kind of we'll win the duel. Maybe you won't be happy about it, but we'll win the duel, and then in March, we're going to give you our full strength.
I think in this year, for Iowa's lineups, there's 10 weight classes. I think there's some weight classes that are pretty much solidified. I really do think some, he's not sure right now what it'll look like come the end. It's kind of up in the air. I would imagine he'll probably listen to the Wrestlecast to determine, what to do. So thanks for tuning in, Coach Brands. We're happy to help.
Yeah. Well, if Tom Brands is listening in, then you guys should too. And spread the word around to your friends and neighbors, and not rowdy neighbors. I'm sure. I don't think I want to mess with him. But Danny, just as an aside, as we kind of wrap up, we're hearing lots of good things about the Wrestlecast.
That's great.
I think we're doing well, and this is going to come off as a joke, but this is our best broadcast so far.
You think? Okay. All right, great. Well, good. You just keep, hoping
I'm going to say top 2.
Top 2. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. You're only as good as your last broadcast.
That's right.
We say in newspaper, you're only as good as your last issue. And after a week, if you're a weekly, people forget about the last issue and you move on and you have a new slate and you just make it better.
I like it.
Guys, thanks for everything. I appreciate it. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Wrestlecast. I'm Danny Davis, and I'd like to thank our weekly hosts, Gage Gill and Shane Barron. And thank you for listening to our second broadcast. Follow Sportscast Media on Facebook, or you can go to our website at www.sportscastmedia.com for more information on who we are. If you're interested in advertising opportunities, please email us at thewrestlecast.com. I think that's it. It's a long show.
That's it for this week's edition of The Wrestlecast. For questions on advertising on our program, or if you'd just like to drop us a line, you can do so at sportscastmedia@outlook.com. Follow Sportscast Media on Facebook, or go to our website at www.sportscastmedia.com. The Wrestlecast is a presentation of the Sportscast Media Network.